Among dragons, they are arguably the most mysterious. While much attention is given to the great fire drakes like Smaug, Glaurung, and Ancalagon the Black, the cold drakes would leave their mark as well. And thanks to newly released Tolkien writings, we now know more than ever about these fireless creatures. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the cold drakes of Middle-earth. Like all dragons, the cold drakes of Middle-earth were created by Morgoth during the First Age. After being handed his first defeat at the hands of the Noldor, the Dark Lord realizes it will take more than orcs to defeat the elves. We are never told exactly how Morgoth creates these terrifying creatures, but when Glaurung, the first of their kind, is unleashed, he is used to terrible effect. Not only is he capable of breathing fire, as most traditional dragons, but he has an ability to put people under a spell. We see this as he freezes Turin and later causes Nienor to lose her memory. And late in the First Age, Morgoth would reveal dragons with a new ability, flight. And it's with these traits in mind that we look at another unique type of dragon, the cold drakes. For decades, fans would know incredibly little about this unique type of dragon. We knew of only one example of such a creature, and the prevailing thought was that their name simply meant they didn't breathe fire. All this changed with 2024's release of the collected poems of J.R.R. Tolkien, assembled by the incredible scholars Hammond and Skull. In these books, we find there was much more to their abilities, and that one of the few named dragons, who tormented men and dwarves alike, was revealed to be a cold drake. But first, there has always been an unnamed cold drake, and likely others, that we know about from the appendices of The Lord of the Rings. There, we find that in the 26th century of the Third Age, dragons would attack the dwarves living in the Grey Mountains. These dwarves, who had centuries earlier fled Khazad-dûm, would see their halls plundered by the foul creatures. And while they would wage a war against the dragons for 19 years, they would ultimately be forced to abandon their home. In the final year of that conflict, King Dain I and his son, Fror, are killed at the gates of their hall, and we are specifically told their killer was a cold drake. But in Tolkien's poems, it's revealed that a famous dragon who predated this war was also among the cold drakes, Scatha the Worm. As we've discussed elsewhere, Scatha also dwelt in the Grey Mountains, but again the poems give us even more detail. Tolkien's first version of the poem Scatha the Worm states, "Some have great wings like the wind, some have fire and fierce wrath, some have venom on their long teeth, some have hides like armor, tails like steel, tongues like spears, eyes piercing bright. Some are great and golden, some are green, some are red as glowing iron. Not so was Scatha. He was gray, he was cold, he was silent, and he was blind. He crawled like a slow creeping death, too horrible to flee from, froze men with fear and his icy breath, and then crushed them, ground them, under his long white belly." While it has long been believed that Scatha did not have wings, for both he and Glaurung are referred to as worms, there are some great new details never before seen by fans. We find out he is gray with a white belly, and that this great beast was actually blind. Despite this, we know that Scatha was a terror to both men and dwarves, and in the appendices we find he had possessed a great hoard of dwarven treasure. But most interesting of all is the line that redefines the concept of cold drakes as we've known it for decades, saying that he froze men with fear and his icy breath. Rather than just a simple absence of fire, it turns out Tolkien's cold drakes did indeed have a unique breath all their own. We don't get a full picture of this icy breath, whether it could have been a full-on beam of ice like dragons in other tales, or perhaps a more subtle effect that manifests only in the freezing it places upon its victims. Personally, I find it interesting that this icy breath and the fear that freezes men sounds very similar to the effect Glaurung's gaze has upon Turin and Nienor. However, rather than Glaurung's malicious machinations for his victims, Scatha would freeze men and crush them and grind them under his belly, a terrible fate for any who would stumble upon the Great Worm. In total, we get 3 versions of the poem, Scatha the Worm. The third and final version gives us a few more details about Scatha and his abilities. He was blind and cold, but he could smell gold. He was long and rich, and eased his belly's itch with sharp, bright stones, but his toys were bones, hands of dwarves and skulls of men that were piled in his den. Lick smooth and white, not for him was flight. A wingless drake, not for him was fire. A slimy snake, fouler than mire, crawling and creeping on like a slow death, freezing with fear and his cold breath, crushing and grinding under his white womb. Dark was his dwelling as a dark tomb. Again, we obviously get the references to his white belly, his cold nature, and his blindness. We also learn that he could smell gold, perhaps giving us a clue that not only was his sense of smell key in overcoming his lack of vision, but that he may indeed have been blind before he took over the dwarf horde. We also get the great lines where we learn that he had the bones of fallen peoples as his toys, hands of dwarves and skulls of men, these no doubt being his victims whom he devoured, as their bones are said to be licked smooth and white. Of course, we know that Scatha would eventually meet his end. Near the year 2000 of the Third Age, a lord of the Eotheod, the ancestors of the Rohirrim, would kill the Great Worm. Apparently, having avoided the fear and cold breath the dragon wielded, Fram, son of Frumgar, slays the foul creature and claims the dwarven treasure for himself. To the dwarves who claim the treasure to be rightfully theirs, Fram would send only the dragon's teeth. And among the treasures to be passed down for centuries to come is the Horn of the Mark, which would eventually be given by Eomer and Eowyn to Meriadoc Brandybuck. While chronologically the last we hear of cold drakes are those who attack the dwarves in the Grey Mountains, there's reason to believe their kind would live on. Gandalf tells Frodo in the Fellowship of the Ring, "It has been said that dragonfire could melt and consume the rings of power, but there is not now any dragon left on earth in which the old fire is hot enough. Nor was there ever any dragon, not even Ancalagon the Black, who could have harmed the One Ring, the ruling ring, for that was made by Sauron himself." Not only does this quote leave the door open for lesser fire drakes and cold drakes to exist late into the Third Age, it actually confirms it. Indeed, Tolkien would say as much in his own letters. Dragons, they had not stopped, since they were active in far later times, close to our own. Have I said anything to suggest the final ending of dragons? If so, it should be altered. The only passage I can think of is in Volume 1, page 70. There is not now any dragon left on Earth in which the old fire is hot enough. But that implies, I think, that there are still dragons, if not of full primeval stature. While Smaug would indeed be the last dragon to make a large-scale impact on the events of Middle-earth, it's interesting to think about the potential effect both cold drakes and lesser fire drakes may have had in the corners of the world. Perhaps, like Scatha, left to obtain treasures and freeze their victims with fear. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Z and N, Evely, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.